Ready to stop trading time for money and build a business that can scale? Then you're in good company. This is the Productize Podcast, where I chat with entrepreneurs who've transformed their businesses using the Productized Service model. I'm your host, Brian Castle. Want to learn my best strategies for productizing your business? Then get my free crash course by going to productizecourse.com. Now let's get into the show.
Hey, here's another episode of the Productized Podcast. Today, you're going to hear my conversation with my buddy Justin McGill. And this is a really excellent case study specifically in leverage. And I'm going to talk about what that means in just a minute. But this conversation happened, I think it was about 6 months ago or so. We spoke in the middle of 2015 to talk about his business, LeadFuze, which started out as a done-for-you lead generation service. And then later, he kind of leveraged that productized service launch to later, convert into a fully software business. So that's interesting. But talking about leverage, Justin leveraged his own agency's software tool for prospecting to then build this done-for-you lead generation service, and that was powered by his own software. So you'll hear the story of how he launched really quickly and then grew this thing throughout his first year. You're going to hear all about Justin's 24-hour challenge to launch LeadFuze and whether or not he actually made it. How Justin met his goal of $1,000 in the first 30 days, $1,000 in revenue, that is. Then we talked about growth strategies, how he used to, and like the things that he used and put in place to grow to over 30K in less than his first year. That's 30K monthly recurring revenue, pretty impressive stuff. And then how he's now taking that next step of releasing the software product off of the success of his productized service business. So a lot of insightful nuggets on this one. So you'll definitely want to tune in for the whole thing. Now, today's quick tip when it comes to productized services, actually this one can apply to just about any service or any business, is to sell to businesses. Now, I know that there are plenty of amazing products and amazing businesses that sell to consumers, and they've done that very successfully. Personally, if this is your very first business, even if it's not, I so much prefer B2B, selling to businesses. Why? Because businesses have, they look at it as a clear return on investment. That's how they evaluate products. Is this product going to save me time? Is it going to save me money, or is it going to make me more money? Those are the terms that business owners think in terms of, and that can really apply to just about any product or any productized service. So, and then that actually makes it easier for you to come up with the right idea, because it's all about value proposition. Does this solution actually solve a problem, and how much is that problem worth to a business? That's actually pretty easy to quantify when you think about it, especially when you compare it to selling to consumers. They make purchasing decisions for products on using a much different framework of and really hard to predict framework of factors. You've got impulse purchases, you've got entertainment factors. Who knows? The list goes on, and it's, to me, B2C is kind of a big mystery. I know that there are experts out there. You should really talk to them if you're interested in B2C. But B2B, I just think, is where it's at. And so that is today's tip for productized services. And now into today's interview with Justin from LeadFuze, and of course they're a lead generation service for, guess who? For businesses. So we're going to hear all about it. Okay, we are back with another case study interview for the Productize course. I'm here with my buddy Justin McGill. He's the founder of LeadFuze.com. Justin, welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. So why don't you tell us about LeadFuze? What is it? And what are we looking at?
All right, yeah. So LeadFuze is a B2B lead generation platform. Started off as a done-for-you service, and we're kind of transitioning now into a platform where we find your targeted leads. Our software goes and finds the email addresses and social profiles, and then right now the done-for-you component includes creating the email sequences, the follow-ups, and just doing all the filtering, and we just forward you the leads when they come in.
Awesome. And so, how did this whole thing start? Because I remember you launched it pretty quickly late last year, right? But you also had the software component kind of in place. Like, how did that all come together?
Yeah, so I had over the years, I started with a digital marketing agency back in 2008, and I was spending about 6 hours a day prospecting. And I did that for about 3 weeks and realized there is just no way I can continue this. And so I built out some systems initially. And basically, when I decided I was going to start LeadFuze, I kind of looked at what I had available to me and just decided to kind of patchwork some things together to make it work. It didn't necessarily scale in the initial phase of, LeadFuze once I started it, but I got to about 6K MRR, and that allowed me to bring on someone to help write the email sequences and do a lot of the grunt work.
All right, so before we get, let me kind of unpack that real quick. So you had this internal tool that you had used in your previous business in the marketing agency that you were using internally for your own prospecting, and this was a software tool that basically went out and scanned Google searches and LinkedIn and kind of put together.
So at the time, it just basically scraped Google search results because, again, we were selling SEO essentially. And so we had just built it for scraping Google results. And what we did is crawled the website and then looked at who is and crawled that and pulled in the email addresses that way. Mm-hmm. And so we just kind of made some guesses as far as, is this the right person? If not, obviously we'll try and get an introduction or something. But that was kind of how it originally worked, and so it was really basic.
Yeah, and it was an internal tool, so it wasn't it didn't have polish.
No. Yeah. It didn't. Yeah, no, not. It didn't even use Bootstrap design. So it basically looked like Excel. So it was just for internal use, and really it was just me that was using it, so it wasn't a big deal. But
yeah, and then when you launched the LeadFuze service, what did that look like on day one? What were the things that you guys were manually doing for each new customer?
Yep. So we were initially targeting customers that we could target with that software. And so we had a lot of agencies sign up and even web development companies and people that, needed to target local businesses. So ma and pa type, maybe chiropractors or lawyers or dentists and whatnot. And so we took on a lot of those types of companies early on. And that just kind of helped validate more than anything that this entire process was something that was valuable and that people would pay for. And so I knew once that happened, we could kind of start to transition into more of a technology and software company by building out, more robust functionality, leveraging LinkedIn and finding, actual emails of specific contacts, which is now what the platform does. But, when we first started, that was not something that it did, So just kind of launched with, again, just what we had, which was what I was using before. And then, just now we're starting to gradually build kind of that front end interface to it.
Yeah. And what I really like about what your service did in the beginning, and even I guess what it still does for the done for you service, is that you guys use your own internal tool to do the work for your customers. But your tool makes your jobs really, really easy and efficient. Right.
Yeah,
so you just kind of sorry about that. You just kind of line up, a new customer manually. It takes, whatever, an hour or less to get them going. And then the tool kind of runs.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, especially if we're doing our own lead gen through the tool, because we can send the outreach email, and if people are interested and they respond and say, can you tell me a little bit more about how it works? They just experienced it, so this is exactly how it works. And so instead of, us getting, you getting an email from us, we would basically be reaching out to businesses on your behalf. And once they respond, that would get forwarded to you. So it's actually really nice when they come from a cold email because they've already experienced how it all works. So makes it an easy sell, I guess, at that point when they know they've been through it.
Yeah. And you guys are writing the emails that go out for your customers?
Yeah, so not the software users. Right now we just have the tool that allows them to do their own prospecting. But on the done for you, we do all of the email sending. We write the email sequence. So essentially, once they're signed up, their job's done. There is nothing left for them to do except for, just respond to the hot leads as they come in. But we've sent thousands and thousands and thousands of emails, and so we know what works and what doesn't. And so we can, we have some frameworks that we follow as far as, some best practices for cold emails. But be happy to share, kind of one of those formulas if you'd like.
Yeah. So what works?
Yeah. Okay. So I call it QVC, kind of easy to remember. But typically, what you would do is you would just kind of start off with a question. And so, for LeadFuze, if we're reaching out, we might say, have you thought about doing any cold emailing as a source for lead generation? And then, seeing that they'll see that question first, right? Because I'm not saying, hey, this is Justin, I'm with LeadFuze, just drop the introductions. They're going to see that first sentence in the preview panes, right? So, and that's what they'll see first on their mobile phones, which is where, more than half of emails are first read. So just get right to the question and have that question kind of lead into your value prop. And that's the V part. So the Q is the question.
And it gets them to reply to the email, right?
Right.
It gets engagement, and I assume that having them reply also increases deliverability on.
Nailed it. Absolutely. Yeah. So we try and keep things conversational. The value prop should only be 1 to 2 sentences, so it could be like, if you're trying to find your ideal target customers, then this platform is built for you because it finds the emails and social profiles and everything for you. And so, so that's kind of the value prop section, right? So 1 to 2 sentences max. And then you close with, and that's the C part, close with like a CTA. Could be, do you have 5 to 10 minutes to discuss? Sometimes you hear people say, just, tomorrow or just Thursday at 10 a.m. work for you. And that's fine if you're going to send like a one-off or, just a handful of cold emails, but that doesn't scale. If you're sending 15 out simultaneously, that 10 a.m. slot's not available for everyone. So, typically I would just say like, do you have 5 to 10 minutes available in the next, couple of days? You could, I've also experimented with saying, are there any particular types of businesses that you would target? And it's not even about setting up a time yet. And then when they respond to that and say, yeah, I'm after, CTOs of companies with 20 plus employees in the biotechnology space,
So like that's how you use it to sell LeadFuze.
Right.
Are there any types of businesses that you would target? But you can apply that to any of your clients, right? Like you can say like if you're, like in my case, I'm selling like content marketing, right? So like if like the third email in our sequence for audience ops was, to kind of just get the conversation started, saying something like,
so what I just went through,
what are you trying to teach your customers, or whatever it is,
Yeah. So what I went through right there is actually one email. So so it's a QVC in that one email, right? So it's the question, value, CTA, or close in the one email. And then you would follow up and you can, emphasize another value point that you want to reach or make. You can follow up and say, hey, didn't hear back. Is creating content, still something that you are struggling with or interested in, and then kind of another follow-up after that. You could say something like, still haven't heard back. It sounds like, content is not necessarily that important to you. If you change your mind in the future, let me know, right? And I would actually get a little more hard stance on that and just say, I'm not going to send you another email. Obviously you're not interested at this point, but should things change in the future, let me know. Yeah. So that would kind of be a general flow, right, of an email sequence. But that first one's really critical that you nail. But you can still close, right? So if I'm in your situation and I'm reaching out to promote content marketing, you could say, it could just be something like, have you considered, outsourcing your content needs? It could be, are there any types of, particular types of content that you like to have created? Mm-hmm. And just all you're trying to do is get them to start, just to respond to that, not like buy your product.
Yeah.
Right. And like you said, if they do respond, that helps future deliverability, shows engagement, all the good things. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, all right. So let's go back to the very first few days of LeadFuze again. So you have this like rough internal tool that you guys are just using internally for your customers. All right, one quick question about the tool at the time. Were you open about the fact that you guys have a tool and that you use a tool with your customers, or was it just like, because I remember when I first saw the LeadFuze service, like I totally was unaware that you guys were using your own tool. I thought that you were kind of just building a list, manually using whatever other tools are out there, and then like manually send. I thought you had like a team of VAs or something sending the emails. Like that's what it looked like from the marketing site. But like how much? Because I kind of look at LeadFuze like this service with like invisible software behind it.
Yeah, that's essentially how it was. You know, it was all back-end software. I did mention that to people, but I didn't always mention it. So I could see where there would be some confusion. And I think if people didn't realize that there was software, it was like probably even more of a deal.
Yeah,
you know, that they're like,
I
oh, wow, this is
I was
amazing.
like, I don't care how they do it. Like,
right. Yeah, and honestly, that's how customers were. I mean, they didn't care. They were signing up because they knew that they didn't have the time to do it themselves. And the idea of just hot leads showing up in your inbox was very enticing, right? So, yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of people didn't care. We did later on actually include kind of a note that, you know, our software does this and that, because it was like, you know, I think more than anything it was more of like a perception thing. Like I wanted them to know that, you know, this was like maybe a more advanced company or something. I don't know. But yeah, I can see where there was confusion for sure. I know when Rob Walling, he's a customer of ours, and I was kind of going through the process. He's even him, and this was, you know, a couple of months ago, and he was like, "Oh wow," he's like, "I didn't realize you had like your own software that did this." I was like, "Yeah." So, yep. You know, I was kind of explaining it to Rob at that point that we were planning to transition into more of a software platform. The goal is for us to be able to, I guess the mission-wise, it's to end cold calling. But the goal is to have like an end-to-end, you know, just one unified platform for your lead gen. So, yeah, we're kind of rolling it out in phases. Like right now we have the prospecting tool, and then now we're basically rebuilding the emailing component and going to have that included. And then kind of the framework that I just walked you through, like we're going to actually be able to walk users through that too, because that's like the number one challenge everyone has when they're doing cold email, or they have concerns if cold email will work, and it's because they've been sending their shitty cold emails out to everyone, and you know no one responds to it, and they think that, oh, it's just cold email doesn't work. Well, it's you know, it's probably your message. It's what is it that you're trying to sell. You know, chances are it came off spammy, and you know, yeah, you're not going to get any results.
So how did you get the very first paying customers for LeadFuze?
Yeah, so I'm in several different little entrepreneurial groups. So I'm in Dynamite Circle, which is actually where our first customer came from. I'm in Rob Walling's group. You know, now it's Founder Cafe. It was Micropreneur Academy. I'm in the Productize course, right? So I'm in different entrepreneur groups on Facebook as well. And so I was just kind of putting the word out there that this is what I was doing. I did it, you know, launched it all in 24 hours. I kind of saw a product challenge by Nathan Barry where he was putting together an ebook in 24 hours. And I kind of wanted to take that a step further and launch a business in 24 hours. And so I did that, got the website up, and just put it out there. You know, I mean, I launched it on Monday at 1 o'clock, and I started it actually Monday at 12:59 p.m. and I started it at Sunday at 1 p.m. Told my wife I wasn't, you know, I wasn't going to be available. I mean, I worked 17 and a half hours on it straight. Got a little sleep in there, so not straight, but 17 hours working on it in a 24-hour window. And then, but that Saturday, no plan. I mean, there was not, like, this wasn't even on the radar. So it was just something that was like, all right, you know, I'm going to do this. And then what I did is I set a goal. So obviously the first goal was to launch in 24 hours. But then the next goal was to set a deadline for me to acquire a certain threshold of revenue. And for me, it was, I wanted 4 customers signed up and $1,000 a month in revenue within 30 days. And if that happens, then I know I'm onto something and it probably deserves more of my time. And so, you know, I put that on my whiteboard. I told my wife, I told everybody around me that this was the goal, and that helped keep me accountable to it, right? So I call it a success metric, and I think putting a time frame on it is critical because, you know, you'll never know if you're on the right path or not, right? So I talked to an entrepreneur. He came actually to LeadFuze to sign up as a customer, and he was offering some like CSV merging solution. I guess he had software that did it. I mean, you could do it pretty easily through command line. Obviously, most people aren't familiar with that. So I'm like, all right, you know, I'm like, so who are you trying to go after with this? And he said event planners, which, you know, caught me off guard a little bit. I was like, okay, can you give me like a use case? I mean, like, why would they be using this? And he's like, you know, different event information or something, whatever. I was like, all right. And I go, so are they paying monthly? I mean, what, like, I'm not really getting it, right? And he said, no, it's $39 one off. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can get you an ROI, like that's a tough deal. And I go, so you've been in existence now for 4 months. How many customers, have signed up and purchased? And he said one customer in 4 months. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You've made $39. Like you're hosting for, HostGator is that, it's like, it just makes no sense, but when you don't set a time frame, it's like you just have no idea if you're on the right path or not.
Yeah.
So I just feel like that's such a critical component to set that deadline and just make sure that, that you're holding yourself to it. If I didn't hit, the $1,000 and the 4 customers, I wouldn't have taken it serious. I had just launched a SaaS product, my first SaaS product a couple months before that called Workadoo. It's a, platform for marketing agencies. Basically, my agency that I started back in 2008, we needed this platform. And so we built it out internally, and that's what we used. And I was like, hey, let's make this a SaaS product, right? Yeah. So I made every mistake you can imagine when I came to launching that. We spent 9-10 months in development, and I didn't talk to any customers about it, and we just launched it. But what I did do is I said, okay, in 60 days, I want $1,000 in MRR. And we were at like 300 or 400 within that time frame. So I was like, all right, a nice little side project. Hopefully I get back to 60K that I put into building it at some point, but I'm gonna try something else. And so that's when I kind of realized, like, validating the SaaS product with a service, can really come in handy first. Yeah. And so, that was kind of the angle I went versus trying to rebuild everything I had and, make it this robust platform. I was like, all right, let me just get this out there and get some people signed up for it and see what happens.
So your goal was $1,000 in revenue in 30 days. How soon did you hit that?
29 days.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was getting to the end. I was getting stressed out, because everybody knew, right? Like it was on my whiteboard. I knew what I needed. And I ended up just giving this guy a deal, to get the last mark over 1,000, and he jumped on it, of course. And so it worked, but,
nice. And so the way that you got your first customers was you kind of posted to a number of entrepreneur forums that you're a part of. I guess you posted it to like Twitter and whatnot. And then from there, I'm sure there was some word of mouth. And so like you had some traffic coming in. This is like targeted traffic because entrepreneur forums your customers are entrepreneurs, founders. So that seems pretty relevant. So
that was one process. And then the other one was actually leveraging LinkedIn groups. And so I installed the SumoMe plugin, which, just allows you to quickly share your content. And so I was doing all of the content initially. And so what I did is I installed that plugin, and then I went and you can join up to 50 groups on LinkedIn. And so I went and joined 50 groups, and they were for like software companies, marketing companies, and just wherever I felt like our target customer would be. And so every time I created a blog post, I went and I shared that using the plugin, which just makes it easy because it's just one click from your blog post. And then you can post to groups. And so I would literally just start typing in A, and that would bring up all the groups that started with A, and just select them all, and then B, and select all those, and then click submit, and then just like that, it gets posted to all the 50 groups that you're a part of.
Nice.
And so I drove in, a ton of leads through that process. Actually, something like 75 leads over the first 60 or 90 days. Wow. Now at the time, I was turning away like 75 to 80% of people because they weren't like targeting necessarily that ma and pa that I was telling you, that our software could do. And so now, we could pretty much help everybody B2B, but at the time, we turned away a lot of people. And so, but yeah, that's kind of how I did it initially.
And so I'm interested in how you used the revenue, because you built up revenue pretty quickly. You had the 1,000 in the first 30 days, but then after that, it started to snowball, and you were growing revenue. How did you then leverage that to then start building this out as a software product?
Yep.
And I'm also curious, like, when did that come into your planning, right? Because like at first it was just like, let's throw this idea at the wall. This is LeadFuze, see what happens. How soon were you thinking like, all right, it's a productized service, but it's going to be a software product?
Right away. I knew my long-term plan was for this to be a software product because I wanted to scale out the business. I didn't want to just have, I wasn't really looking for like a small like 6-figure business. It's that so I had success with my agency, and I backed away in July of last year, and then I launched LeadFuze in December. And so I wanted to at least 10x what I'd accomplished with my agency. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking for maybe something bigger. Now, initially when I told my wife when I was going to do this over the 24-hour launch, I can't say that at that point I felt it was going to, I didn't know at that point. In fact, I told her, I think, this could be a nice little $10K a month side business, and, she could help me manage it or something, and just, that was the initial plan. And then it was, about, I would say probably halfway into that first month, I started to kind of realize that there was more to it, and there was a lot of value in the software component. And so beginning of, I guess about the second week, right after our first month, I had a guy from the Micropreneur Academy named Dominic who was interested in partnering. And at the time, we were talking different SaaS products. I had still not lost interest in having my own SaaS product. Outside of Workadoo, that I was kind of jonesing for the next thing, I guess, at that point. And so we were talking back and forth, and I was still just validating LeadFuze at this time, so I didn't know where that was going. And he kept coming back to it, like, "Are you sure you don't need help with LeadFuze?" I was like, "All right, let's do this." And so we got together, and I was, he started to rebuild our back end first, and then so we kind of rebuilt that whole process, and now. Now we're at a point where we're starting to build the front end, software component. Well, we've already launched the first phase of it, but
and so
it was.
Well, I know that you are pretty open with your revenue numbers. You do like reporting and whatnot. So like, what did revenue look like, and how did it grow in those first 3 to 6 months? And then like you kind of like reinvested that, so it was really like a self-funded.
It was completely self-funded. Luckily, my paycheck was coming from my agency, still does, quite frankly. So I'm able to invest, everything back into the company, whether it's employees, different tools and marketing, whatever. And so I started off, it was at 1,000. I didn't need that 1,000. So, it stayed in. And then over the next 30 days, we went to, it was around like 3,300 or 3,500, somewhere around there, a month in MRR is where we were at. And so at that point, I started paying Dominic $1,000 a month was the agreement at that point. And so the next month, we got around 7,000. So it was starting to kind of grow, but once it got to 7, I was tapped out. I could not take on any more clients. I didn't want to sell anymore. I shut down doing any outbound. I stopped promoting blog posts. I didn't do anything because I couldn't take it on anymore. And so I started looking for an assistant. And Michael,
and you couldn't take on anymore only because of the sales workload, or because like servicing once they're onboarded.
At the time, it wasn't like, so our software went and found all of the leads, but like we didn't have a blacklist feature that allowed us to ignore a customer's current list. We had to pull back the results and do all like the removing of duplicates and, getting rid of like invalid emails. So like a lot of times you'll see in Whois, it'll be like, privacy proxy at, whatever. And so we had to get rid of all that stuff.
Like you guys did internally. For a while.
We did all of that, yeah. So it was.
You did it like manually, so yeah.
All manual, yeah, and not fun. That was not something I enjoyed. The creation of the email sequences always just stressed me out for some reason. I knew, I could always do it, and I would, once I sat down to do them, I was just churning them out pretty quick, but. The stress of it got to me, like when I knew, okay, I just signed 3 customers and I got to create 3 email sequences. Oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? It was just that feeling, and I just did not like the feeling. And so I decided to start looking for an assistant at the time, and my plan was to actually just offload the manual work. And Michael, who was at my agency as a copywriter at the time, he ended up seeing that I was looking, or he wasn't. He was not working at my agency at the time. He left my agency to go pursue his own business, like a healthy smoothie thing. But he had a background in content and stuff, and we had stayed connected and are good friends. And so he saw I was looking. He was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna shut down this healthy smoothie thing. It's not really going anywhere." And so I would be interested in the assistant role. And so when he said that, I was like, oh man, I could offload writing the email sequences too, and just do everything and then just ramp things back up. And so, I did that. We decided to bring on a VA. I just didn't feel like some of that manual work was the best use of his skills. So went through Virtual Staff Finder and brought on a VA and later a second VA through that process. And so now, all of that is like automated. I mean, the list building is automated. Not the actual building. Like our team we'll go and build the list. So we'll use our extension and just add them all, and we're done. Mm-hmm. The duplicates are, that's easy and already handled. We've got a blacklist feature, all that good stuff.
So it was like one by one. You were taking these manual, tedious tasks that you were doing in the first couple of months and like offloading them to Michael or to a VA, and then that allows you to ramp back up sales.
Yeah, so now I can go back and focus more on sales. So I got so after about 90 days, I think we were around 7K. And then for that next month, I think we got to like 8K. I mean, it slowed down that month because I was doing so much training. That was when MicroConf was going on. So I know, we met there. But yeah, so at that point I had a VA coming on, and then Michael had just started full-time a couple of weeks. I guess about the week before April. So this was at the end of March. So I was starting to kind of train him and offload a lot of that. Then when I got back, trained the VA, and then just went right back into sales. And so from there, we went from 8K to in April to 13K, I believe, in May, and then to 20K in June. And then July slowed down a little bit as well because I started, we were launching the product in July. And so that got to 24K in July. And so, I was spending a lot of time, managing the product. So my CTO is awesome. He handles all the development. We've tried a couple of outsourced developers, and it just does not work that well. So I will not be bringing on a contractor. The next developer I bring on is actually going to be someone that comes on to the team. Contractors, they've got their own deadlines and their own things that they're working on, and they're trying to grow their business, and so their priorities are not the same. They don't care about your product, so just had too many issues. So Dominic basically had to rewrite everything that we had a couple of contractors building anyway. So yeah, Michael, still does all of the email sequences, but now he's also doing some content marketing. We're going to start ramping that up now that, our software product's launched. So should be a good time. Now I brought on 2 commission sales reps as well. Both of them came to me when we had launched the software. They were like, "Oh, this is awesome. Like, I want to come sell your stuff," And I was like, "All right, well, what pay do you want?" And they said, both of them said commission. I mean, it was their suggestion, and I just felt like the timing would be awesome because I could offload the sales work and, really spend a lot of time doing marketing and then training the sales team, learning some of those processes that, I can kind of test with commission reps and later on apply, those best practices to growing out the team and everything else. So
nice. Well,
yeah, that's been the journey up to this point.
It's been quite a ride. I mean, this is less than a year, and less. What is it, like 8 months?
Yeah, so 7. Yeah, we're in our 8th month now. Yeah,
8 months, and you guys are at over 25K MRR.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Well,
yeah, it's going fast, man. And the nice thing is too, it's just going to continue to go faster and faster because, just we're bringing on more salespeople. That's allowing me to focus on more marketing, and we're able to ramp up use our own tool to generate leads for our sales team. So it's, I think it's gonna ramp up pretty good here soon. So
nice. Well, it's exciting story. The combination of using your internal software, building it out as a software tool, of course, filling in all the gaps with the done-for-you productized service. Well done all around. I'm just excited to see the progress going forward.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I know some people too that aren't maybe in a position where they've got an income coming in and they need that productized service to work because that pays the bills. What I would do is still look for some team members to offload some of that work. And you can get creative with some of the hours. So you could say, okay, part-time 2 hours at, $1,000 a month, right? And if you're not at 1,000, you got to do everything you can to get there because you're not going to be paying bills anyway. So get to a point where you can bring on someone for a couple hours a day, $1,000 a month. let them know that the plan is to expand their role, set some goals. So, in 30 days, I should be able to get you to 4 hours at $2,000 a month. And in 90 days, my goal is to get you full-time at, $4,000 a month, right? I mean, so the key is, again, going back to having those goals and being accountable to them. But you can still get creative with bringing on some help. So don't shy away.
Yeah. And, and the other aspect that I think about when I look at LeadFuze and what others might be thinking about as they look at this story is like, all right, well, fantastic growth. You were able to launch this thing, but you had this software tool to begin with. Like you had the good fortune of having this software tool that you could already use to service your customers. But I think the lesson here is that anyone can launch a LeadFuze type service. I mean, maybe not necessarily doing the same thing, but like any other thing, and you don't have to have your own software. You can use some third-party software.
Absolutely.
And when I first looked at LeadFuze, I just assumed that you were using a third-party software or just using VAs or something. I had no idea that you were using your own software. So, you can
use what's out there.
Exactly.
For me, I looked at what I had, and I had a system that worked for me at my agency. So I was like, all right, I can do something with that, and just built like the done for you service around it. Again, more so just to validate it. I will say with my agency, the first hire I made there was a sales rep. And I don't recommend going that route because no one's going to be able to sell the product or the solution better than you as a founder. So, I know that might be out of the comfort zone of some people, but you have to be the main salesperson, so your first hire should be someone that can do the fulfillment while you still remain focused on the actual sales. And then, start growing it out from there.
Cool. Well, Justin, thank you for taking the time, and we'll look forward to seeing some updates from you going forward. And talk soon.
All right, sounds like a plan. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in today. Get all the show notes for this entire season at productizepodcast.com. And to get my free Productize crash course, where I share my best strategies for launching and sustaining your Productized service business, head over to productizecourse.com. All right, time to get back to working on the business.